The history of Chinese philosophy contains a highly unusual editorial maneuver. In the Song dynasty, scholars took a massive guide to ancient behavioral rituals and extracted a single chapter to stand entirely on its own. The original, sprawling text was the Liji, or the Book of Rites. The extracted chapter was the Zhongyong, a title most commonly translated into English as the Doctrine of the Mean. By isolating this specific text between the years 960 and 1279, Song dynasty scholars elevated it to form part of the Sishu, or the Four Books. The Sishu served as the absolute required core of the traditional Confucian education system for centuries to follow. The legacy of Confucius, pictured here, was carried forward by his family. Traditional accounts attribute the authorship of the Zhongyong to his grandson, Zisi. Modern scholars, however, point to linguistic evidence suggesting it was compiled later, during the former Han period, between 206 BCE and 8 CE. Translating the title Zhongyong strictly as moderation strips the text of its actual mechanical weight. The document outlines a rigorous metaphysical framework, where the internal psychology of a single individual directly controls the stability of the cosmic order. This split-screen comparison highlights a critical distinction. The modern Western idea of moderation is often viewed as a linear slider, a simple compromise located halfway between two opposing extremes. The Confucian concept of the mean operates differently. In the Zhongyong, the mean is an ontological state of pure harmony. It requires the practitioner to lock onto a central tone and emit that specific frequency outward without wandering or leaning to either side. Maintaining this central tone requires the continuous application of three operational virtues: Ji, which is wisdom, Ren, representing kind-heartedness, and Yang, which is courage. Applying these virtues creates a literal chain of command. The text argues that the precise cultivation of the self regulates the surrounding society, and the regulation of that society dictates the governance and survival of the entire state. The text establishes this causal chain by defining the origin of human existence. What heaven has conferred is called the nature. The passage dictates a three-step progression. First, heaven confers human nature. Second, acting in strict accordance with this conferred nature is called the Tao, or the path. Third, the active regulation of this path is instruction. Because human beings cannot step off this path for an instant, the superior man must exercise acute caution regarding things completely hidden, secret, or minute. This diagram represents the baseline psychological state of the individual before any interaction with the external world occurs. While the mind is entirely devoid of the stirrings of pleasure, anger, sorrow, or joy, it exists in a state of perfectly centered stillness. The text defines this untouched state as zhong, or equilibrium. It is the great root from which all human action grows. When emotions are inevitably triggered by the outside world, they must be released in their exact due degree. The mind vibrates with the stimulus, but it refuses to leave the exact center of its alignment. This active, perfectly measured response is called he, or harmony. The Zhongyong designates this harmony as the universal path all humans should pursue. If an individual achieves perfection in their internal equilibrium and active harmony, heaven and earth maintain their proper order, and all biological life flourishes. The text grounds this cosmic claim in practical sociology. Confucius himself is quoted making a stark admission of failure. In the way of the superior man, there are 4 things, to not one of which have I as yet attained. We can map the specific relational domains Confucius references onto this node network. He admits he has failed to properly serve his father, his prince, his elder brother, and his friends. Confucian ethics are inherently directional and reciprocal. The standard of behavior is perfectly mirrored. You are required to serve your superior exactly as you would demand your inferior serve you. To force this reciprocal network to function, the Zhongyong introduces an operational mechanism called cheng, translated as sincerity. Sincerity here means something far more precise than simply telling the truth. Cheng is defined as the actual nature of heaven, transmitted directly into humanity to act as the root engine of all behavior. Sincerity is applied mechanically. If the superior man identifies a defect in his practice, he exerts himself to fix it. If he detects an excess in his words, he restricts them. His words must have strict respect to his actions, and his actions must have strict respect to his words. Without sincerity functioning as a zero-friction alignment engine between speech and behavior, the entire loop of self-cultivation fails, taking the structure of society down with it. Once the individual aligns their internal psychology, the text assigns them a strict external position. The superior man does what is proper to the station in which he is. He does not desire to go beyond this. To understand this localized station, look at this multi-tiered grid. The rule demands that a person acts strictly in accordance with their immediate present circumstance. The text tests this requirement against extreme environments, placing the superior man in positions of wealth, then poverty, then among barbarous tribes, and finally into positions of deep sorrow and difficulty. The crucial mechanism here is structural integrity. The individual never changes their internal shape or abandons their center to escape or exploit the specific box they inhabit. This creates highly stable systemic rules. A person occupying a high station must not treat inferiors with contempt, because arrogance breeds rebellion. Conversely, a person in a low station must not court the favor of superiors, which would disrupt the existing social structure. By rectifying his mind and seeking absolutely nothing from external sources, the superior man systematically eliminates the variables of dissatisfaction and resentment. By quietly waiting for the appointments of heaven and refusing to walk dangerous paths in search of lucky outcomes, the individual removes all social friction. This deliberate, localized inaction ensures total political stability. The logic of the Zhongyong functions as a unified field theory for Confucianism, connecting microscopic human emotion to macroscopic political order. First, maintaining internal equilibrium yields active harmony. Second, this harmony is kept aligned by the zero-friction engine of sincerity, ensuring words and actions match. Finally, this aligned individual acts exclusively within their societal station, scaling localized harmony up to the state level. The Confucians treated this system as a practical instrument. They believed heaven and the spirits actively responded to this alignment, communicating a ruler's success or failure through physical omens and environmental stability. The text makes its ultimate claim: a perfectly still, completely centered human mind literally stabilizes the forces of the cosmos. The doctrine of the mean proposes that the ultimate technology for controlling the universe is simply the relentless, microscopic regulation of the self.